presentation and I don't quite understand what it's all about.
Okay, Ms. Jenish, would you like to explain?
That's in regards to the rice notice, and there's been a new legislative.
Can you hear
Oh,
Mrs. Brown?
why don't we,
Thank you.
does she have a personal question about
She received her rice letter.
that's something that you should probably discuss with the administration.
I can give a summary.
Sure.
Mrs. Brock, there's a new regulation that every person that's on the agenda, even if they're getting a stipend or payment for an extra service, now must be given a rice letter and put on the agenda. So for tonight, there should have been another letter that we received, but it doesn't matter, because for tonight, due to this new regulation, we had to send out over 170 rice letters. So very simple things like, if you're a wrestling coach and you're paid for your wrestling, even though we've approved it, we now have to give you a rice letter because you're on the bills list to pay. We're hopeful that this has changed because it's a severe challenge for our business office and all of this to try to get out notices you'll be discussed when you're really not being discussed. But the new law, which is based on the college who had board meetings like once every several months, requires we give everybody who receives a stipend or payment or on the extra services list, they have to get a letter every meeting. So we're very hopeful. So it just means you're being reimbursed for a service that you provided. It was already agreed upon. It's absolutely nothing at all to be worried about. And we share your concern and are extremely hopeful that this new regulation gets modified because it's a very significant hardship when you think between 175 and 250 letters per meeting have to go out to inform people that they are getting paid for the extra service they were approved for.
Okay, it's not,
How was that?
it's not something I did. It's
No,
not something
nothing.
It's a new state regulation. It's a new state regulation that any employee's name that's mentioned on the agenda, we have to send them that letter.
But it doesn't mean anything about me getting into trouble or
Nothing
doing
bad.
something wrong?
No, ma'am,
For
it
you,
does not.
nothing bad.
It does not. It's always wonderful to see you here, though.
Thank you.
If you were getting a merit raise tonight, which Mrs. Brock, you truly deserve for everything you do, but if you were getting a $1 billion surplus, we would have to give you a rice notice now to tell you that it's being discussed. So it's a little unique, and my guess is, like everything else, the pendulum will swing back and forth.
If I may, it's actually based on a court decision, the
Pardon?
appellate division involving a case out of Kean University. And everybody's hopeful that it's being
Okay.
appealed to the Supreme Court of New Jersey.
I feel better now.
Yeah, we're
Good.
hopeful that will
Yeah.
happen.
Yes,
very
I'm
worried
sorry
when
it
I got the
concerned you.
letter.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
sorry. Any other questions from the public? Okay, at this point, I would close the public portion of the meeting. Mr. Becker, I'm sure you have some response that you might want to give. I would like to, on behalf of the board, just make a couple of comments. Nothing is ever swept under the carpet by this board. That is an accusation that I take offense to on behalf of the board. We spoke at length with Mr. Bullock here giving a presentation on what transpired with the Jefferson incident, what took place after the Jefferson incident, what the plan was as follow-up with the Jefferson incident. I'm not sure if you were here when he gave that presentation or not. It was at a board meeting after the incident had occurred. And then there was discussion at several other board meetings with a follow-up from Mr. Becker, what took place after the fact. Nothing is ever swept under the carpet. Just because you don't have knowledge of it does not mean that it was swept under the carpet. Just because the responses that you're receiving are not the ones you want does not mean that it was swept under the carpet. That's number one. Number two, just off the top of my head, immediately I wanted to respond to the Army coming in to, that was a discussion that was brought to us. We have not voted on that event happening. There was no recommendation that it happened yet. When it does happen, that's when we will give the information out to the public with happiness. We want the students to be involved in it. We want the parents to know about it. I think that's what we said at the board meeting, that we wanted to make sure that the parents and the public knew when this was going to happen. We even asked if it could be at night so that the parents could be invited to it. But we have not approved anything. That has not happened yet. the, Mrs. Pelestis, the policies that we read for the first time today, they're not voted on yet, so they are not our policies yet. We have not completed the second. After the second reading, they will be posted online with the remainder of the other policies. And these are basically policies that there are small words. The
I
changes
know.
of the words were,
I know,
right.
I get it.
So they are basically the same policies with those minor word changes. I don't want to get into a discussion back and forth, but that's just to
No, I
answer your
just had a
question.
Online, you said their policies are online?
Not yet.
Not yet. no.
Not yet,
None
they
of them.
are. They're coming.
Okay,
As you see with these changes and that giant pile, these are the policies we're talking about just for tonight's, the first reading. Getting all of this stuff online, and then keeping up with it, because these are changes that someone has to be kept up with. It's happening. It's slow, I know it's slow, but it's happening. So I believe that's
And
all
we
the
have the,
quick
we do
answers.
have the 5-year.
And we do have a 5-year plan. We approved it not long ago.
In terms of the policy, Ms. Pelestis, a lot of it was just very, very simple things, like instead of the Common Core standards, as you know, there was a decision in Trenton to say we no longer participate in Common Core, and we now participate in the New Jersey standards. And during this big change that was made, in actuality, the change was changing one letter in a formula for volume, they put a capital instead of a small letter. So the changes tend to be very, very minute in the vast majority. But right now, and this is tonight's, it's 175 pages. And I wish I could tell you that a lot of it was worth changing, but when we had to change titles because of during a political campaign, it was announced we're no longer following New Jersey standards, we're going to have our own standards to try to dissuade some of the public outcry. The end result is the practitioners here have to go and change every policy and every wording in the district. And my frustration is it's hours and hours worth of time, and I can't tell you there's a approval benefit toward this. Now, in the policy, there is something in terms of the opiate program, and we're looking at the possibility of Narcan, so we do have a first reading for that. And the reason is we've often been accused of going off on our own, so we just want to put it out there. It's the Narcan that we're looking at. We've already had our nurses and our SAC people trained in elements of Narcan, but it's not to the point we can implement it. So by doing this, what we're doing is giving public notice we are looking at this, we're investigating it, we've invited the police, we're going to have a workshop in this, and it's going to be a work in process. So there will be no second reading on this at the next meeting, but this enables us to go ahead and bring in more workshops and thoroughly prepare for it. We hope that, like the AEDs, we'll never have use for it, but I think given the way society is, I would rather have the schools, even if we have a visitor, I would rather have us prepared than that on eventuality if something does happen.
If I could just add one thing to that, we're not really gonna have a choice in that. That's a new state law that's being voted on, it's been approved by either the Senate or Assembly already, and it's going to the other house.
Yeah, and the governor's definitely in favor.
But it's on.
It'll be enacted.
That is gonna be a law, we will have.
And that'll make it much easier for us, but we didn't want to wait. We're trying to get ahead of the card on this. We had our first workshop with staff several months ago on this. Not all the staff, but the nurses and some of the trainers. So we're looking at that. So the problem with this is it's actually a work in progress. This has actually undergone several revisions from when we first sent it out to the board members to review. Ms. Mullen was very kind to point out a bunch of things that she thought should be revised, and they were viable. And after tonight, we'll continue that revision process. So I did ask Mr. Group in terms of distribution. I don't know in terms of the procedure for a draft policy that should be distributed or not. I mean, I'd be glad to share it with you. The problem is, if I share it with you and then it's distributed and then people say, this is your policy, and the final policy has changed, it could create chaos. But if you'd like to come in, you're more than happy to.
No, I understand. I was talking about, I'm sorry, I thought you meant policies in general were online. And
We are attempting to get them all
okay,
online.
that's what I thought.
It's
I
not
wasn't
really
talking
changed
about
yet.
the first reading, because
That's
I
our
understand I do understand first and second reading, and I do understand the changes, because
Okay,
I
I
just
believe your
spent the day-
statement may have been contrary, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to explain to you what we're doing and why, maybe for some members of the audience. SAT prep, all right? SAT prep is no longer, it's the Kaplan, as we said at the last meeting, it's a Kaplan organization that is handling it. Will no longer be offering the SAT type of programs in Dover because they say that basically that's not the way to go. We're being recommended to use Kaplan.
It's con.
I'm
Con,
sorry.
he said
Con,
Kaplan.
Yeah,
Kaplan.
it's
It starts with a K.
K-H-A-N.
I get partial credit. But Khan Academy is the appointed vendor from the College Board to offer this. And as we said, the students get an individual prescription fund. So I think your comments are really not fair because we did address that completely. We no longer will be offering the traditional SAT program, which in the past we had several layers. We had the ultimate, we had the standard, we had multiple courses that were actually going on. But now, in fact, I don't know, I think it was last week, the high school actually sent out to every parent. Was it last week, Mr. Franks, or was it pending? The information about how to register and all the information? It's pending? Okay. So that should be going out to every household for Khan Academy. All right, not Kaplan, Khan Academy. But that'll be going out to every household because that's a much better venue for students to get the practice for meeting the needs of the new program. Theoretically, they say that the SAT will not be improved by any standard type of SAT program, but in terms of the specific types of questions and strengths and areas, that can be found because now there's a link between Khan. I don't know why I'm saying Kaplan, I guess for years of Kaplan, but there's a link between Khan Academy and the actual performance of your child on those tests. So I think that'll be viable. So the perception, whoever told you that we'll be running several courses for different levels of students, that is not accurate now or in the future. It was accurate in the past, but what was not mentioned is we actually opened it up to a lot of students to go ahead and take this. It wasn't discriminatory except for the fact if you haven't had math that would require you to do well, it was recommended that perhaps you should take, instead of general math, you should take an algebra 1, algebra 2, to prepare to optimize your performance on the test. So the old study mechanisms are now out, being replaced by the new ones for the new test. We hope it works well, but I can't look at my crystal ball because we're in the phase now of seeing how it'll work. One of the challenges with that test is that now they're actually incorporating science and social studies, I believe, into the body of the testing. So like there's passages in English that might be social studies, so now there's actually an extrapolated social studies score based on parts of the English text. So this is going to be very interesting to see how all this pans out. I have it accurate, Ms. Schoonmaker? Okay.
And I have a question for Ms. Schoonmaker. Isn't Khan Academy still available for really all students, not just SAT, but it's a great advantage for, you know, just your child at home, that if you want to look at something and go over Khan Academy, it's excellent.
College Board looked on, Khan Academy
Yeah.
existed before the change to the
Right.
SAT, and it was there in the multiple discipline areas, and still is. Then when College Board changed the SAT to make it a test that wasn't, you were taught how to take a test, rather than, they made it pure content, then they aligned themselves to Khan Academy because they wanted to level the playing field and make it so that you couldn't buy a high score in an SAT by taking, you know, courses. And they made Khan Academy the official test prep of College Board for the SAT, and it's free. And when you connect your College Board account to your Khan Academy account, anytime you take a PSAT or an SAT, your scores are added to Khan Academy, and it automatically differentiates your performance, based on your performance on any of those assessments, what you individually need to practice on. So the concept, which again, as Rebecca says, we're just going to find out, in the next few months how it works in practice, but theoretically, it's supposed to be, you know, we're looking at it as being a stronger prep program because it is so individualized, and it's available to everybody for free.
Thank you, Ms. Shoemaker and Mr. Becker. I actually have 3 questions.
I just wanted to, before we ask any questions, I wanted to add on to that, just for the edification of parents and also the audience. The students are brought into guidance each year. Every single student comes in, they meet their guidance counselor, and at one point, there's also an opportunity for the parents to come in and meet the guidance counselor. They are taught to log on to the College Board, to the website, they have their user ID, they log on to it, they are taught how to go through it. There are benchmarks with this system where at a certain point it may say, okay, it's January, this is what you do in January. It's September, this is what you do in September. There are benchmarks for this. There's even like a question of the day study course for SATs. I don't know if they're still doing that, but I think they were doing it. I know when my daughter graduated in 2014. So it's not just the SAT itself. There's a whole process to this, to working up to taking the SAT, to applying for college, to apply for vocational school, or to go on to the Army. There's a whole process. It's not just at senior year. You're clocked into
And the best
this.
thing is the questionnaire that you can go through about your child's
tailor-made.
interest in everything.
Tailor-made.
And a list of colleges will come out. My daughter ended up going to one I never heard of before, and it popped up, we visited, and that's where she went.
You sit down with your student, you go over what are your likes, what are your dislikes, and it gives you feedback. These colleges fit your need. And it continually updates. It's a great resource, and it's not just for the students, it's for the parents also. So just so that you are aware of that, it's not just taking the SAT, it's not just the SAT prep course. There's a whole system to it, and it starts from freshman year.
Yes, absolutely.
Moving on to
Everything counts,
college. I'm
freshman
sorry.
year on.
Go ahead, Ms. Rose, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam President.
So who's
Miss-
they recommended, and how do we make the decision?
Excuse me,
to
sir,
switch
we're
over
done with the
to a
public.
system
We're
that
done-
we
we're done
have
with-
no absolutely idea of how it functions?
Sir, we're done with public comment at this time.
Maybe I didn't make myself clear, though. The students are brought in freshman year to their guidance counselor. That's their job, the guidance counselor, to help them. And they sit down and teach them how to log on to this system. They are given their student ID and their password to log on to the system. And then this continues on through their 4 years in high school.
Okay, but still, who recommended, and how do we make the choice to transition to Khan Academy? If I just keep on hearing, we have no idea what it's gonna do.
Who
We're
recommended
still waiting to
collegeboard.com?
see
Is
the
that what you're saying?
results
Who
of
recommended?
this decision.
Right.
I'm not going to discuss this back and forth. There's no way I'm going to satisfactorily answer your question. I'm sorry. Right, you can speak to the guidance department if that,
If they ever answer,
okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Ruiz, yes.
Thank you, Madam President, Mr. Becker, and Ms. Shoemaker for clarifying some. I have some follow-up questions. My first, to honor Mr. Moore's concern and to recognize that while we certainly may address incidents, in particular in executive session or at meetings that all the public may not attend, and we don't film our meetings, so they may not necessarily have access to it, can we please instruct Mr. Moore of where he can find a policy to protect students, what, if any, changes were made to our existing policy after the Jefferson incident, and if we could give a brief summary. I certainly don't remember everything that Mr. Bullock explained at that last presentation, but if anyone here does, to help Mr. Moore hear or learn, if he hasn't already, what was done after those racist chants in Jefferson, here in Dover. What did we here in Dover do to ensure that that does not happen again?
I like to think for a minute before I answer, because it is an important question. I think that you have to approach this on several different levels. I'm sorry, Mr. Moore, you're not happy with the actions that were taken. I know full well your opinions and how you feel about it, and you don't feel we're progressive enough on it. And as we talked about it at the other meeting, I respectfully disagree with you, but that's okay. In terms of Jefferson, the impact on Jefferson is they have changed their procedures. They've changed their procedures in terms of the site manager, which was my basic concern. Okay? My basic concern with the site manager aspect was, something should have been done. We shouldn't wait. Parents shouldn't have to go up during a halftime. They shouldn't wait till the end of the game. My concern was that I felt it was a failure, not in terms of the Jefferson student body, but it was simply the way it was managed. And Jefferson has, after discussions, agreed with the fact that they are going to be more proactive. What they've done is they've stopped on their own accord. They've stopped the practice of turning their backs when the opposing team came in. They stopped the chants. The site managers are being more proactive. In terms of what we've done, we met with the coaches, and they now have a full understanding that the moment you hear something, stop the game, go to the officials, and make a complaint. I'd rather have it investigated then than let it simmer and try to deal with it as we did Jefferson at 12:30 at night. It'd be much better to attack the problem while it's going on and just stop it. And our coaches has been made very clear. If you feel that a situation is, searching for the correct word, a negative environment for our children, then just voice your concern to the ref, and if necessary, pack up and go. Because it's not something that we want to get into a debate on the field with, and I don't want our students subjected to it, and that's why we took very, very strong, immediate, decisive actions across the board to remedy this. And I'm sorry if that didn't come through to you, but I think we actually did a great deal. The Human Rights Commission has also been very active in voicing a concern at Jefferson that, changes continue to be made. And I honestly feel that they're doing a very good job in understanding what the issue was and trying to correct it. Some of us will never agree with everything, all right? But my sense is they did take steps. Now, at another level, at the state level, and I know I'm repeating this, but maybe it was at a meeting you weren't here, so that's fair. When we went to the NJSIAA, here we go again. All right, did I get it?
Yes.
All right, there's some points. When we went to them, that's an ongoing conversation that is taking place. The principals in Morris County, at their meeting, a lot of this was discussed, but not a lot of it, I'm sorry, this was discussed. And they are fully in favor of taking more aggressive action to ensure that civility by all people, students, parents, and people in attendance, is employed. As far as I'm concerned, if someone is using offensive language or profanities, they should be thrown out of that, and that's it, done. There should be no conversation with it. If you're inappropriate, and maybe if you got a warning and you didn't change, go. It's all situational. But at the county level, the principals are getting together and deciding ways that they can attack the problem. And the principals were extremely attuned to the problem and what they can do to solve it. Because they all recognized there was no, I don't think I'm talking out of turn, Mr. Franks, but there was no debate among the principals that it was wrong. And their concern, because principals tend to be the practitioner in the building, is to make sure that this stuff stops. And there was an agreement among the principals that high school sports, secondary sports, have lost elements of what they're supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about character development. It's supposed to be about sportsmanship. It should not be about degrading the other team and supporting your team. It should not be about mocking or trying to replicate Duke fan attitudes as people walk on the court, but it should be supporting everyone. And I think that element of high school sports is what has to change, and that's what we're pushing so hard to try to make it so. Now at the state level, which is another level, we've been very active, and the NJSIAA is known for, they're moving on it. And I think they're very concerned with how can they develop rules and regulations. You know how it is now. They read the comment at the beginning, and most people, I shouldn't say most, that's unfair too, but many people don't subscribe to what is being read for the rules of sportsmanship. And so what they're looking at is ways that we can actually start putting teeth into the code so that the environment does change, because the environment has to change. These are high school sports. It's not college level, it's not pro level, and we shouldn't have any student, male or female, or regardless of sport, no student should walk onto a court and be degraded. And I think what Dover has done successfully is shine a spotlight on our concern with this, because there was never anything swept under the rug about this. I think we're pretty upfront in terms of our feelings and our concerns, and I mean, anybody reading the papers, it was pretty clear. We weren't out to criticize and condemn, but simply out to change, because the environment for sports has to change. If we are not teaching people to behave appropriately and respond with civility, then we have abrogated our responsibility to teach character. And with the expenses of sports, that's something that really should be our hallmark. And that's why on our Facebook page, I've been very careful to put every team that's been successful in terms of, look at how many of our teams have won the sportsmanship, the leadership, the good sportsmanship, the kids awards that are coming through. To me, this almost means as much, I have to be careful, you know, win and loss is extremely important, but nothing fills me with more pride than to see the Dover kids selected once again for role models of sportsmanship in the county. And so I think what we have here is very good. So why do we insist upon denigrating each other when we have been the model that others should aspire to be? And we continue to push that agenda with the other schools. Mr. Franks has been very active at the county principal level in terms of, you know, pushing the agenda. Mr. Bullock, who I think every person in the room would agree, outstanding man in terms of character and civility and grace and diplomacy, is bringing that forward to the athletic directors in the county. So you look between the principals, the athletic directors, the endemic changes that have been made in Jefferson, that they are really working to change. If you attend their games now, there is a noticeable difference. And then at the state level, that takes a little longer to both you and I would like, but those changes are taking place, and I'm hopeful they will be in place fully for next year, because everyone acknowledges that things have to stop. It's just, what happened to Dover is terrible. But I would suggest that it might be more of a symptom than a cause. It wasn't just this one case that was so terrible. It was terrible, but it really represented a symptom of the attitudes that we see among more and more teams as we go to play, and that has to stop. And so that's what we're trying to do. I'm sorry if it's not enough, but it's everything we can humanly do and practically do. And I think really, I mean, my pride is I think we're making very good progress in not only changing it for Dover, but changing the environment that the other districts and hopefully the state are playing in. Because I think one thing we can both agree on, the atmosphere in the game is just not appropriate. It can't be condoned. And I think in Dover we've been very, very proactive in terms of controlling our site. And we do need that same degree of attention at the other districts. So I hope that helps somewhat answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. That didn't answer my question of where we can find our model policy and what changes we've made to it since the Jefferson incident. What is our procedure for when coaches and our coaches, not other coaches or the state, when our coaches suffer this attack, because it's attack on our coaches as well. It's their players, it's their students.
That's right there.
I missed it. What are they supposed to be doing?
I'll
'Cause
go over it again later. Yeah.
He really explained it very detailed.
What our coaches are supposed to be doing? Okay, so then what changes have been made? Because that I missed too. Did you mention that?
I think he did at the end. He said that we are the model example of
Right.
it.
And
There's
did
not much more that we can do to tweak a policy or a code of conduct when it's near perfect. We have zero tolerance.
So we
Zero
haven't made
tolerance.
any changes to our procedure since the Jefferson
Yeah,
administration.
no, he explained in detail.
Is it written?
And certainly
He
we
said
can.
that the coach, well, I'm sorry, I don't
It
know.
says
I should be
here,
right,
let's
but he
see.
said that
Dover
Thank
they
you.
should go to the ref right away. They
Uh-huh.
should bring it to the ref's attention immediately.
The
You
parents.
shouldn't wait. No,
The
no, the
coaches.
coaches.
So coaches go to the ref.
And if the situation is untenable, the coaches can pull the kids out of the game. They could leave.
They can
Okay.
And he
walk,
went
they
through
can
it.
walk
He
out.
went through
And
it.
that's what we can expect from our coaches moving forward.
Correct, correct.
Wonderful,
Mr.
thank you
Francis,
for that.
Is that
That's
what
what-
we can expect from our coaches?
Absolutely.
Is that
There's
what?
quite a bit of awareness.
Would you like to add anything that I may have omitted?
I think you explained it very well, Mr. Becker. But there was quite a bit of time and effort put in by everyone, by the board, by Mr. Becker, Ms. Schoonmaker, Mr. Bullock as well, myself, and the hours, it was weeks and weeks of engaging with principals, with Jefferson, with the NJSIA, with the Attorney General, with an HIV investigation was launched as well. And these are all things that were done, and I think Mr. Becker, you said it very well, where everyone is not going to be pleased with all of the results and everything that was done. But I know Mr. Bullock, our athletic director, he's sitting on a committee right now of 10 principals and athletic directors from our conference to discuss issues that I think Mr. Becker, you said it very well. This is not a college, high school athletics are not a college atmosphere. And that's where the trend was going. But right now, across Morris County, this was even at Atlantic City, when Mr. Bullock received his award, there were breakout sessions, it was a conference, and it was on the agenda with the athletic directors. The Jefferson Dover incident was on the agenda, and it was discussed about the atmospheres in high school athletics right now. And this committee that Mr. Bullock is sitting on, as is the principal from Jefferson, and 8 other members of our conference, they are discussing climates and what's going on in different gymnasiums. We're working with coaches, their coaches, the coaches across the conference to have an impact. And changes have been made at Jefferson already. How they structure their events, where they put their personnel. They are now identifying who the site managers are, who the teachers or security personnel are at those events. Something they adopted from us, because we already do it. We have our personnel in fluorescent jackets or vests, shirts, say event staff. People can clearly see in Dover High School when you come to an event where you're supposed to go with a concern or a complaint, whatever the issue is. The Referees Association is also the assigners. I've spoken to several referees, as Mr. Bullock speaks to many more of them, but it's still an issue for them too, and they're including it in their training sessions and their discussions about, being more aware of what is being said at contests in high school athletics. And again, it started, I think the trend is going to be, it's going to get back to interscholastic athletics environments. We have been promoting, we do it here at the high school, and I think are being recognized with those boys and girls basketball teams with the Sportsmanship Award and the boys soccer team as well. Those are awards that are recognized by the officials. The officials recognize us for how we conduct ourselves on the playing field or on the courts. But the emphasis of that group of principals and athletic directors and the referees, we're focusing on let's cheer for our team. That's why we're there. We can have a gymnasium filled with opposing fans, cheer for your friends, cheer for your school. That is the focus. And that's going to filter through Morris County. The chants of, that's all right, that's okay, you'll work for us one day, but those are going to be a thing of the past, at least in our conference, because this committee that was formed as a result of the incident that we were involved in, where we've done nothing wrong. In Jefferson, the meetings we had, where students came here with the administration, they had a group of 8 students, we had a group of 8 students, we met, it was a great event. We talked a little bit, quite a bit about, what it took to get here for some of our students, got to know them a little bit, they got to know quite a bit about us, and the perception of things that were said, we discussed that. We went to a meeting at their place a couple weeks later, on March 17th. It was a tremendous opportunity. The students were excited about it. We talked on the bus, and they felt, the one young lady said it best, she said, this was closure. This was great. It was a great opportunity for us, and they were excited about it, and as are we. But again, like Mr. Becker said, I just don't think we're gonna be able to please everyone all the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know what, Mr. Becker, another thing too, Dover being a model for sportsmanship, this is not the first year. There have been many years where we have been the only school in Morris County to receive the Sportsmanship Award, which says a lot for our school community, our community at large. So it's nice that, you know, this unfortunate incident, one of the results is that we are being more and more recognized as a leader in sportsmanship and how to treat other people.
And Mr. Moore, I think one thing that we're having a challenge with, to just be, you know, trying to put everything on the table, one thing that we're working on are not the words that are said, but what is the intent. One school district, when the opposing teams walk on, they chant SAT scores. But what is the intent? Is the intent there to congratulate the other building for their SAT scores, or is it to mean? So one of the things that's actually harder for us to try to deal with, because you know how it is, everybody will say, oh, I didn't really say that, I just alluded to it. But we're trying to work on intent. What is your intent? Is your intent to diminish or degrade the opposing team? If so, even though the words may not be specific, if it's perceived that the intent is there, that, in our opinion, will take the same action as if any blatant comment is said. So I hope that helps too, because there are so many layers of this, and they're not easy answers.
Yeah, you mind if I just say one thing? Is that
I'm
all right?
sorry, we're not taking.
We're done with public comment now.
If I could just, I'll let you speak in a minute, Mr. Scarnio. If I can just relay to Mr. Moore, Mr. Franks is here. He has heard your comment that you're still not satisfied with the meeting that you had with him, with the emails that you've received from him. He has heard your comment. I can guarantee that he will be in contact with you again to discuss this until there is a now, it may be the ultimate ending of what we can do for the situation, and you still may not be satisfied. Hopefully you will be, but you still may not be satisfied. That, we put an end to it. That's all we can do. We can do better the next time. We move forward and we do better. This exact situation that happened between Jefferson and Dover took place 1 week later in Kansas. It was a mirror image. If you had seen the picture on TV, you would have thought it was Dover. They had the same outfits on with the patriotic flags. They said almost exactly the same things. There were indications about walls and whatnot, and this was to a migrant Mexican population in the district. And it was one, they had planned it out. That was the biggest difference. They had planned it out, and both teams knew that this was going to happen. So it was an anticipated fight. That's got to stop. And that situation, I believe, both teams had no more playing after that. That was their final game. They were not allowed to continue their season. It may come to that eventually here, if people can't act in a civil manner, if we can't protect our students when they show up at a game, any game, volleyball, soccer, anything. But what we have to do as adults and members of the community, we have to be examples for our students as well. We can't take to Facebook and just say whatever we want to say. We just can't do that anymore. It's a reaction, and it's an angry reaction, and it's understandable. But we really have to not do that, because our kids are seeing this. Our kids are right behind us seeing all of this going on, and we have to stop that. We have to be the change. Be the change. Mr. Scarnio, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, the one thing was, I'm an NJSIA official. I work games all over northern New Jersey. This was not a Dover Jefferson incident. I mean, it's not isolated to us. This happens at all the schools all over northern New Jersey. It is a symptom of the disregard we now have for other people. And a lot of it is not meant to be harmful. They think they're funny. It's become the in thing to do to mock the other team. What our incident did was draw a red-hot spotlight onto this, and it got the school officials talking. It went through the SAA, it went through the athletic directors' conferences, it went through the principals. And they sat down, they talked, and they realized it happens all over the place, and they have to take measures to stop it. We started a couple of years ago with the sportsmanship statement. It's very effective dealing with the players on the field. You utter a racial remark, a discriminatory remark, anything like that, you're gone. You're out of that game, you're out for the next game. It's not an issue. The stands are a little bit more difficult to control, and that's where site management comes up. And this issue, that's unfortunate issue that we had, put a spotlight on it, and I think the entire state Athletic Association now realize it is something that needs to be addressed, and it's being addressed. It's a shame that, you know, we had to be the focal point of that, but usually it's one polarizing incident that does force change, and I think this is the one that's done it for local sports.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scarnio. Okay, anything else from board members?
I had 3 questions, I have 2 more. Thank you, Mr. Becker, Mr. Franks, Madam President, Mr. Scarnio. That was, at least for me, I can't speak for others, that conversation shed a lot of light on the situation. Regarding the 5-year plan, if I remember correctly, and I don't have the notes in front of me, I'd asked about a 5-year plan before, and I know that we have one, and I asked whether we could include it on the website, and as I remember, we agreed that it would. I haven't seen it on the website, the 5-year goals, plans. Did we agree to put it on there, and if so, when can we expect to see it?
I believe it's part of the whole policy packet, isn't it? Long-range facility.
No, the 5-year plan, like the long-term goals. I mean, I presume it would include the facilities.
Yeah, I think there's a little confusion because I think what was being discussed earlier was the long-range facilities plan, which is a 5-year plan.
Okay.
Which is
So then I apologize for my confusion, but from the last meeting, I'm looking for those 5-year plans, the goals, and I thought we agreed that they would be on the website.
Okay. I don't know what we agreed to.
Board
Board goals, you were talking about board goals?
District goals.
Okay, you know, a lot of that will be at the next meeting where we present the
Right.
goals as part of the budget.
I think that's what we did reply
I think we
Yes.
can,
that it was
Yeah.
going to be during the budget presentation, because that's when.
That's not what
Okay.
I remember, but I'm glad to know that we'll hear them at the next meeting. And then after we hear them, then it sounds like they'll all go on the website.
The whole budget presentation will go on. the
Okay,
website, yes.
and that would include the goals. Okay, and then my final question regarding the SAT, as many of you know, my son is a senior in high school, and he did participate in the Khan Academy, and his guidance counselor was helpful in helping me even figure out what Khan Academy is. I am personally a in-person learner. I don't do online classes and webinars. I need a face-to-face. I think my son is probably very similar. When he was taking his SAT prep, some of his friends did have in-person, in-class materials, and they did receive this invitation, I believe came from the board at that time. Are we continuing to do that, and how do we do that?
No, we
We're not doing that anymore, so the last year was 2016, or 15. Okay, so we're no longer doing that in-person class, even for a select field.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, nothing else from the board. I will take a motion to close. Oh, I'm sorry.
Executive session?
Yes, definitely. I'm sorry.
I didn't need to.
Definitely. I'll take a motion.
For
Yeah.
matters of,
You have to have a motion to, and it has to list the specific things that are going to executive session.
anticipated litigation.
Anticipated litigation. We will not be taking any action. We will not be voting once we open back up and close, correct? Correct. Okay. Motion and a second to move into executive session from open session. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right.